NICU graduates, and let's see how best we can follow up, whom do we follow up, what are the tools we use in the follow-up, and how do we optimize use of these tools. And with me, you are seeing Naveen. Naveen is a DM neonatologist, and he's currently working at Ludhiana. And Mohit, all of you know, is from Surat, a very, very passionate neonatologist and a very high-end neonatologist, because he travels with his eco equipment always. And the previous talk must have been really a thriller for him, and it must be a hat-trick sixer, because he sees eco, he get excited, elated. So, and Jafar is new person in the group, who is now I think the neonatologist of MP, and he's done excellent work in the field of neonatology and changing the scenario of neonatal care. So these are our panelists, and let's look at what we can do to improve the outcome of our babies and how do we follow up them. And NICU graduates, when we say, we're talking about babies who are admitted to us for perinatal asphyxia, babies who are premature or very low birth weight, babies with severe jaundice, babies who have hypoglycemia, and babies with infections, mainly meningitis. The outcomes, when we talk about, we are looking at the outcomes at infant and toddler outcomes, and sometimes school age, and sometimes adolescents too. And there are some studies which are looking at adult outcomes. And we know popularly Dr. Sudha Chaudhary from Pune, who has done extensive work on the outcome of low birth weight babies. When we talk about outcomes, we're talking about growth, we're talking about neuromotor, we're talking about neurodevelopment, talking about vision, hearing, behavior, and autism. Autism is a new block in the list, but this is also an important outcome need to be assessed for. So with that background, I will start the questions to the panelists. Jafar, since you have joined neonatology for the last 10 years and you're working in this field, is it worth saving these babies, and what is the current status of NICU graduates world over as well as from our own country? Can you throw us some light?
Yes, sir.
I will project your slides. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the current status of follow-up and NICU graduates in our country? So, we have seen that from last 3 decades, we have overall improvement of in preterm birth and survival has increased tremendously. If we see that there are around 90+% preterm survival rate now in our country, and out of that, around 75% babies are very extreme low birth weight babies. So with this survival rate of preterm and ELBW, we have also increased morbidity, which is also accumulating. Okay, so this is adding a huge number of graduates who need follow up properly for the first few years of life. Along with increasing the survival, these babies also have some long-term comorbidities, and they have adverse outcomes if they are not dealt with properly with time. Out of these morbidities, they have high incidence of cerebral palsy, because this is some which is associated with prematurity and some other neonatal condition like parental asphyxia, neonatal jaundice, and severe like hypoglycemia. So we need to follow these babies for a few years. Other comorbidities which are associated with prematurities are sensory neural deficit like blindness, deafness, cognitive learning deficiencies, behavioral problems like ADHD and depression. So when we follow these NICU graduates properly and timely, even we can prevent or somehow we can modify these disability like cerebral palsy. If we start timely intervention, we can decrease the spasticity and we can give a healthy life to the baby. So follow-up is actually a teamwork. So which include neurologist, pediatrician, developmental pediatrician, therapist, ophthalmologist, ENT specialist, audiologist, and many more like neurologist, clinical psychologist. So there was so in our country, we have that there are so many NICU units in private and in government setup, but still the follow-up is not very much structured in many of the units. There was one survey in 2014 by Rainbow Hospital, which have included around 192 units of India. And what they found that around 22 units have definite structured follow-up, program for follow-up high-risk units. Other units, they have either very less follow-up or very less number of babies are coming to follow-up. Like hardly 3 or 4 units have 75% plus follow-up of high-risk units up to 1 to 2 years of age. Even they have taken the government institute which have follow-up of around 15 to 20% of their NICU graduates. So what they found, the baby who is less than 1.5 kg, only 50% babies, the more than 50% baby lost to follow after 2 to 3 months of age. So there are lots of a huge number of babies who are lost follow up even first year of life. And if we see, there are very in India, even there are some good units which have 85 to 90% follow their own VLBW. So if we see that, even we need more number of units which need to have a structured follow program for such high risk new infants.
Sure. Thank you, Jafar, for highlighting the current status of follow-up, which only means that, yes, we are surviving most of these NICU graduates, but our follow-up, the path is not well laid, and many people are still in the neonatal stage as far as the follow-up is concerned. So I think there is a huge roadmap to be made, and Mohit wants to make a point. Yes, Mohit.
Yes, sir. I just want to make a point that like our data also showed whatever we used to run growth and development clinic. So like I am trained in Bailey 3. So when I used to run the clinic, the first 3 months and 6 months, the follow was of all the babies was more than 80%. Then after 6 months, it dropped to less than 50%. And since I've stopped doing the clinic, like I am the treating neonatologist and I am following up, the follow was better. But if some other doctor is saying the follow fell drastically.
Yeah.
So this is also an issue. Like this is what we have observed in our unit.
So it only means that continuum is required, and then
Yeah.
if neonatologist has to learn development, has to be part of the developmental team. So we can't be only restricted to ICUs with those high-end gadgets. We need to be part of the follow-up team. And as I rightly pointed out, the government of India is also looking at follow-up rates, and you can see that lot of SNCUs have got established, and now we know that RBSK is in full stream. Many districts have already started the program of RBSK, and one of the important thing of RBSK is to ensure follow-up of NICU graduates or SNCU graduates. And there are district early intervention centers started in most of the districts to help in follow-up of these babies. Just to summarize what Jafar has said, when we say we are following up these babies, this is the burden across the world now. I try to summarize the major morbidities and their outcomes. In moderate to severe asphyxias, even now 25% of the babies have cerebral palsy, 25% of the babies have MDI, mental index less than 70%, less than 17, nearly 25%. Hearing is impaired in 3% and blindness in 6%. So this is in spite of the therapeutic hypothermia. So don't think that therapeutic hypothermia eliminated the morbidities. Yes, nearly 25% still have problems, even moderate to severe asphyxia. The second problem is the extremely low birth weight babies, and lot of studies already there. We know the Elgan studies, we know the France outcomes. So look at this, even in extremely low birth weight, when you summarize the results, nearly 13% are having cerebral palsy. And if you look at the MDI, nearly 25% have MDI less than 70, which is severe neurodevelopmental abnormality. And nearly 2% are having either hearing or visual disturbances. In severe jaundice, this is a wonderful study from Thailand where they've looked at all babies with severe jaundice, bilirubin more than 25, or this requiring exchange transfusions. You can see here 7% of the babies who had exchange transfusions and had severe jaundice are having cerebral palsy. 21% are having MDI less than 70. Hearing impairment, as which is specific to jaundice, is there in 15% of these patients. The jaundice is more than 25 or requiring exchange. This is what you will likely to see in the follow-up. And lastly, don't forget this preventable morbidity, that is hypoglycemia. And hypoglycemia with neurological signs like hypotonia or encephalopathy or seizures, 50% of these children are likely to have a bad neurodevelopmental outcome. So we know that we are doing good. We know that we are improving survival. Our NICUs are all working hard, but at the same time, there is a lot of burden which we create for the society if you look from the pessimistic point of view. From a pessimistic point of view, I think we need to look at this to make sure that there is optimum and optimism in the patients and in the family. Now, Naveen, can you tell us which NICU graduates require long-term follow-up? How do we classify our babies who requires long-term, short-term, or whatever follow-up we need? Naveen.
Whole idea of this NSU graduate is, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir,
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. The whole idea of a follow-up is to pick up the baby who are at a risk of developing neurodevelopmental disability or hearing disorders or a vision impairment. And Dr. Murki has already highlighted some of the incidence of those disorder. So the idea is to follow up those high risk group where we can institute early intervention therapy so as to reduce the long-term morbidity levels. So all babies who are less than 34 weeks or less than 1800 grams, some units may follow up babies less than 2 kilos, or some units may tend to follow up less than 1500 grams. That varies from unit policy, but generally speaking, less than 34 weeks, less than 1800 grams, all SGAs less than third centiles, and all LGA babies also, which are more than 97 centiles, they need to be followed up in our follow-up clinic. All babies which are being ventilated for more than 24 to 72 hours or having prolonged CPAP or a chronic lung disease needs to have a follow-up. The bigger babies, which usually the hypoglycemia has so much of high morbidity, so any symptomatic hypoglycemia, seizures, culture proven sepsis, meningitis, or, or seizures because of any other cause. And obviously hyperbilirubinemia has so much of long-term morbidity that these babies needs to be followed up. All other babies, bigger babies with major malformations or having any surgical issues because of NEC or because of congenital ileal atresias or any other malformation needs to be followed up. IM as well as the genetic disorders. There are some
Basically,
group of babies which are there and require some drugs like a prolonged aminoglycoside administration or a steroids. They also needs to follow up in a high risk clinic so as to pick up early neurodevelopmental disability. The basic idea is to pick up those baby early and to institute the early intervention therapy. Yes,
no,
you are trying to say
basically
something.
what you're trying to say is everybody who requires any level 3 care is a baby who is likely
Any
to
level
require
3 care or prolonged level 2 care basically can needs to be follow up in the high risk clinic, and then you can stratify these babies with the babies who are at a low risk can be followed up lesser frequently, and the babies who are at a higher risk needs to be followed up in a uh, more aggressively and more frequently. And this is the NNF clinical practice guideline which has divided the baby with a mild risk, moderate risk, and high risk, and you can design and put it in your follow-up clinic. So accordingly schedule the visits of these babies, whether they are needs to be followed up less regularly or more aggressively so as to increase the compliance of follow-up. And it is very important to talk to the patient at the time of discharge so as to convince them that these babies are now fine, they have been survived, but they needs to have a good neurodevelopmental outcome and needs to be followed up. So at discharge, counseling and parent education is very important before we call them for follow-up.
So rightly pointed out, I think all these babies are at risk for problems. The earlier you identify, the earlier we start intervention, the better are the outcomes, and that's the need for follow-up. So Mohit, we know that most of the newborns require follow-up. When and how to follow up a NICU graduate? Is this follow-up uniform for all babies who come to the new NICU, or does the follow-up differ from baby to baby or from category to category?
Sir, I would just like to answer the later part first. Like it is whether it is uniform or disease or baby specific. Basically, it is not uniform. Most of the things when we do the neurodevelopmental or developmental assessment, then it is uniform. But initially, other things are different and baby specific. Like when we talk about the follow-up, we actually do the normal medical follow-ups and the developmental follow-up. So for normal medical follow-up, especially the babies who are preterm VLBW or ELBW babies, who are premature babies. For them, when we discharge as per the discharge criteria of the unit, we tend to follow them up, tend to see them after 24 to 48 hours after their discharge, because we have specific reasons and specific things to see from the medical point of view. There we are not assessing the neurological assessment of these babies. But the other babies, like Dr. Naveen have talked, like, the babies with seizures or HI stage 2 or bigger babies with exchange, those baby we tend to see after 4 to 7 days after the discharge, because there we have a specific reason to call them. And like if you have a baby with the seizures on anti-epileptic drugs, we do follow them after 7 days, but specifically at 1 month of age, we tend to assess them for their anti-epileptic drug, when to stop and when to treat them. But for developmental follow-up, specific developmental follow-up, we tend to see them at, especially in preterm babies, at corrected 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, then at 24 months, 15 months, 24 months, and 18 months, 24 months, and 30 and 36 now. But normally in our unit, we myself or the team who has been trained in this developmental training, we do till 18 months, and then we pass it on to the developmental pediatrician. So we follow at 18 months. And the last, ideally by books, if we go, initially we used to do that till 5 years of age. But now in some of the studies, they did advise to follow them till 8 to 10 years of age. But still, we are following till 5 years of age. And for the bigger babies, like the term babies with the many other indications, we follow them for neurological development assessment at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, 24 months, and then at 30 and 36 months. But that 30 and 36 months in our unit is done by developmental pediatrician. Till 18 months is done by our team with the pediatric neurologist and physiotherapist involved. This is how we follow, sir.
So I
Sir,
think
if
basically
you-
what Mohit is saying is, for all the term babies with morbidities, which is asphyxia, jaundice, or hypoglycemia, at least 18 to 24 months follow-up is a must. For the preterms, I think we need to do till school age or beyond that, follow-up is required. And yes, there are different schedules, 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, and 24 months. Or if you just want to decrease the follow-up burden, you can easily follow. The other people also look at 4, 8, and 12 months follow-up. So, but have some schedule, have a protocol, because everybody should be uniform in the unit. And then having a uniform protocol is going to help us. Yes, Mohit, you want to say something?
Sir, if you just unshare your screen, I just want to show my, this is the, what we, this is
Sure.
what is there in our protocol. This is just one slide, sir. This is what actually is there in our protocol, and this is what we do in our unit. Like here, it is high risk. When we discharge, this is what we follow. This is, and then follow up. Again, we have divided like medical follow up and developmental assessment. This is done in our growth and development clinic, with corrected age for the preterms. But this is how we do the medical follow up for the
Yes.
stable babies, and this is what we do, sir.
So one
is
very
what is-
important point which I want to highlight is, yes, there are some specific things like a baby with severe jaundice, you need to follow up with for hearing assessment at 3 months,
Yes, sir.
also at 9 months. And sometimes subtle signs of dystonic cerebral palsy may not be visible even till 18 months of age. So these babies require special follow-up and for longer
Yes.
duration. So that's what
This is,
I want to highlight.
yeah, because this is like with the Acoustic Society has given the formula 136.
Correct.
Need to assess OE by 1 month. By 3 months, you need to do the BERA. And if there are issues, then the cochlear implant by 6 months.
Yes.
This
So
is
we'll come to that
136
hearing,
formula.
but yes, the jaundice babies require special follow-up of the hearing. Now, once we know we need follow-up, how do we do the follow-up? Dr. Naveen, can you help us? How do we form a team? What are the components of the team to follow up?
Yeah, as Mohit has rightly pointed out that the neonatologist needs to be involved in the follow-up, because you have a better rapport with the family as the baby has stayed there for a month or maybe sometime longer than that. So you need to have a neonatologist, a developmental pediatrician, and ophthalmologist should be available for screening, ROP screening, and for hearing screening, audiologist. lab should be available, and if required, the ENT specialist needs to be available. Therapist, physiotherapist as an occupational therapist, and for all those needs to be coordinated with a coordinator which is in touch with the neonatologist or the pediatrician who is the core person for this follow-up. So this whole needs the whole team needs to be available at the point of follow-up to have a better compliance and the better detection of the abnormalities.
So can you also tell us the components?
Yeah, if I summarize for especially for the NICU graduate, the basic idea is to have the nutrition as the physical growth as a main component, and the second main component is the neurodevelopmental assessment. You might be using one method or the other. Probably we are going to discuss further in detail. So second component is the neurodevelopmental. The third is the vision. Fourth one predominantly is the hearing, and followed up with the immunization. And very importantly, another which is the medical problem, whether that baby is specifically having like a thyroid screen is done. If not done, then you need to do it. Is there any IM screening has been done for other component, and that needs to be followed up. The baby is having small PDA which is keep lingering on follow up. Also any detection of anemia as well as the osteopenia of prematurity. And USG, very important, this USG at 40 weeks of post-conceptual age, even if you have done it in NICU or has not done it in NICU, at that point of time has a good predictor for a long term. And you come to know that these baby, if there is any PVL which is detected or old IVH has called the ventricle dilatation, these babies needs to be more rigorously followed up in our OPD unit. If we talk about growth and development, it is very important that this physical growth and development, they needs to be followed up according to the corrected age, not according to the chronological age.
Yeah.
While the immunization, we do it for a chronological age, and the physical growth charts needs to be plotted. There are many charts available. Commonly, I use Fenton chart initially till 50 weeks of corrected age, followed by the WHO chart in a later part. And these anthropometry weight, head and length circumference needs to be plotted on that particular chart with every visit. And we need to see that whether the baby is growing according to the charts or a growing lesser than their percentile or a higher than their percentile. This gives you a better objectivity for that particular baby's physical growth. Feeding, breastfeeding is always in a preterm and follow-up also. We need to make sure that more of a breast milk is going to those babies, and if required HMF you have been given, then when to discontinue, probably by 1800 or 2000 grams we need to discontinue HMF and put it on other supplements like vitamin D, calcium, iron for a longer period of time till 1 year of age, as well as the multivitamin for next 3 to 6 months. And all needs to be coordinated and counseled and told to the parents, very importantly, that these things we are going to assess in the next either 369 schedule or a 4812, whatever schedule you are following, it needs to be taken care of.
So
and if you detect any abnormality there, then accordingly early intervention therapy, whether it is a stimulation therapy or you need a physiotherapy for a particular tonal abnormalities, which probably we are going to discuss in a
So right, Naveen, he is tried to summarize the follow-up required till 40 weeks. That is till the term corrected age, especially for preterm, and then after 40 weeks. But remember that every week when we follow up after discharge, it's mainly for growth, nutrition, osteopenia of prematurity, anemia of prematurity. These are our goals initially. And later at 1 month, don't forget the eye ROP examination. And before 1 month, again, think of the ABR or AABR for NICU graduates. And as Naveen has rightly pointed out, 36 to 40 weeks, we need to do a neurosonogram to identify the structural brain problems, which can be predictive of long-term neurodevelopmental abnormalities. So we have seen the follow-up team, and now we realize that, yes, there are certain things. Till 40 weeks, we know what we are doing. But after 40 weeks, we have certain things which we need to do again and again. So one of them is the neurological assessment. So since neurological assessment is a compulsory part of, in fact, a neurological assessment will help us to identify the early tone abnormalities, which could be the precursors for later developmental abnormalities. So in the first 1 year or first 18 months, our focus is on neurological assessment rather than on developmental assessment. And Jafar will help us to find out how do we do this neurological assessment, what tools we have, when do we do, and how we assess the neurological assessment.
As you know, neurological assessment is the most important examination we need to do when the baby inside the NICU at the time of discharge, or when baby comes to post discharge also. So, as you rightly said, that neurological assessment is the if we do properly, we can early pick up the any type of early spasticity or early tonic abnormality, and then we can increase our physiotherapy part, and we can correct the tonic abnormality. So there are different tools. We mainly they are based on the neurological examination like Hammersmith neurological scanner, neurodevelopmental risk examination, and Emil Dyson. The full Hammersmith test evaluates the baby in the following areas like posture and tone patterns, reflexes, movements, abnormal signs, patterns, and orientation and behavior also. The second tool is Emil Dyson, which is also evaluate the tone mainly, and we know that the tone, the development of tone is pardiocephalic in before 40 weeks, and after 40 weeks there is a cephalopodal. So we need to assess that popliteal angle and adductor in babies who is coming for follow. So in lower limb, we can increase tone. We can pick up very early, because this is a pardiocephalic development of acquisition of muscle tone. So amitation also includes the neuromotor, neurosensory, neurobehavioral, and head growth is also one of the important parameter of neurological examination, because head growth is, if it is optimal, we can say that there could be a normal outcome. If the head growth is less than third centile, we can say there is a microcephaly, then there is a very gross abnormality can occur later, like the baby who is having spastic cerebral palsy and quadriplegia. If the head size is less than third centile, then it could be a very severe morbidity later on. Next. So in preterm baby, we do that neurobehavioral assessment of preterm like NAPI. It can be used for babies between 32 to for the term gestation. It also includes other motor development and sign like spark sign, popliteal angle, alertness, irritability, percentage of sleep rating. So with these signs, we can early pick up the any abnormality in the development. Next. So this Hammersmith we can actually we can do during hospitalization, and weekly we can plot according to gestational age. So we can pick up any abnormality, even we can pick up any intraventricular hemorrhage very early if we are doing properly. We are doing examination during NICU stay. Then next we can do before discharge. We have to note all the neurological examination. Then again corrected gestational age of 39 to 40 weeks again. And as Mohit Sahni sir told, then again we need to do at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and 18 months. And even we can do every 6 months until the baby is 8 years of age, because this baby sometimes need long-term follow-up and correction also. So there are some angle like poplite angle and adductor angle, which we need to note. If these angles are less than the expected, then we can say that baby is going to have spasticity or tonicity, and we can chart in each month of age, and we can pick up early disability in the infants. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Zafar. As rightly pointed out, our neurological examination includes neuromotor, neurosensory, neurobehavioral, and head growth. Head growth is very, very simple, easy to do. I think everybody should be doing assessment for head growth for all infants, not only for premature babies, to identify the early marker of long-term neurodeficit. So basically, there are two tools which are most commonly used: the Emil Dyson one, which can be used in the neonatal period and also in the infancy. And we have the Hammersmith neonatal as well as infant neurological examination. The difference between these two is Emil Dyson is more of a subjective tool, whereas Hammersmith infant neurological examination is more of an objective tool, giving a scoring. So you get a scoring pattern in Hammersmith infant neurological examination, Whereas Emil Tyson, you will be having a subjective assessment, and you can again divide in Emil Smith Tyson into axial, appendicular, and you can diagnose the tone abnormalities are normal, hypo, and hypertonia, symmetry, asymmetry. This can be looked from the Emil Tyson, but Hammersmith gives you an exact score. So for objectivity and for repeated examinations, Hammersmith is more or less coming out to be a very useful tool and easy tool for doing the neurological examinations. So Emil Tyson, as I said, is more of a subjective tool. It involves evaluation of the posture, axial tone, upper limb tone, and lower limb tone. And Jafar has already pointed out that during till 40 weeks, the muscle tone increases caudocephalic, and after 40 weeks, there is a decrease in muscle tone from cephalocaudal. So you can see the normal tone, hypertonia, and abnormal tone patterns. And you can see the active tone, which is assessed by lifting the baby up, passive tone by looking at the angles, feeding autonomy and sucking, fixing or eye examination, and writing reflexes by making the baby stand on the feet. So these are pictures from Naveen, and he's trying to tell us how to do the popliteal angles or the axial tone of the trunk. This is looking at the flexion. This is for the extension and also flexion and extension of the spine. That is axial tone, and the some of the angles which we look in the Emil Tyson or dorsiflexion angle. One of the early sign of spastic diplegia can be picked up from this. Scarf sign can help you to find out the tone abnormality in asphyxiated babies. Adductor tone, again very useful for early identification of diplegia. Popliteal angle, again very useful in the identification of diplegia in preterm babies. So some angles you need to remember, but overall you remember that if any adductor angle less than 90 in a term baby in the infancy, you should be worried, look for problems. And if you have a popliteal angle less than 90 in the after the first 4 or 5 months, then you should be worried. So adductor angle, popliteal angles, these are the common angles which are used to identify early diplegias. And you classify the tone abnormalities as normal, hypo, or hypertonia. And you can classify the pattern of tone abnormalities as diplegia, which is lower limb is more affected than upper limb. Hemiplegia, only one part of the body is affected. Quadriplegia, when all four are affected. And you can have differential extensor tone compared to flexor tone in some of the babies. And why I need to do this? Because the occupational therapy, the physiotherapy, which we start for these babies on the tone abnormalities based on the type of abnormalities the babies have. And the physiotherapy, occupational therapy will be tailored to the problem. Now, once we know the tone abnormalities, which is the focus of examination in the first 1 year or 18 months, but after that, the focus comes on to the developmental assessment. And we know Mohit has already just highlighted how he's done an intensive care neonatology, as well as he has done the BSID, that is a Bailey scale of infant development. So he is rightly qualified to tell us how do we do the developmental assessments, what tools we have, which tools should be used by the parents, which tools should be used by the pediatricians, which by neonatologists, and which by the developmental therapists. So which are the tools, when we should use what tools, and how do we use this tool, Dr. Mohit?
Just a minute. All the audience, you can put your question in the chat box. So at the end of the session, expert can answer it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Mohit.
Yeah.
Mohit.
Yes, sir. So like for development, sir, as we have already talked about the assessments, like for the preterm corrected 3 months and corrected age we take, normally they say till 3 years, but normally we take corrected age till 2 years of age. And then other thing is, in the term baby is
can you explain the corrected age, because I think that's a very important point. We need to tell the people developmental assessment should be done for corrected age, not for chronological age. Can you highlight this, Dr. Mohit?
Yeah, so the corrected age, like suppose if you have a baby who is born at 28 weeks, so our term is what we define as 40 weeks. So the baby is born around 12 weeks early. So if this baby is 3 months of chronological age, the corrected age will be 1 day for this baby. So that will be how you do the correction. So this is what we have done in our files. We have written a column of correction.
And that you do for how long, Dr. Mohit? Till the baby reaches what?
2 years of age.
Yeah.
But so some of the evidence, like papers and researches, they have taken it for 3 years of age. Yeah. But normally I'm used to do 2.
Yeah, I think most people will do correction for prematurity till 2 years of age. Yes, Dr. Mohit, please.
Yes, sir. So this is what we need to follow. So that's why if you are assessing a baby corrected 3 months, chronological age may be at 6 months. So you should be very well aware that what all you have noticing or assessing should be for the 3 months old baby, not for the 6 months old baby, if you are doing the corrected age, number one. Number two is for development, like, Dr. Jafar has told mentioned about the tools. Like if you are a busy OPD practitioner, normally you do these things, which is very subjective, like which is being explained in ML-Tenson scoring system. So this is what we have found. ML-Tenson and DASI screening is one thing which is very quick. And what we do is we do this screening very quickly by Hamiltonson or DASI screening. There also it gives the scores, DASI screening system. It is not a complete elaborative DASI scoring.
Yeah.
So it gives you, and all the high risk which has failed, which are red marks in this screening, we assess them by Bailey 3 in our unit. But many of my other neonatologists, they are
Mohit, did we lose Mohit? Naveen?
Hello.
Yeah,
back.
he's come back. Yes.
Yeah.
Mohit, we lost for a second.
Okay, sir. So what I was telling is now in Bailey, what we have been following is Bailey 3, and DASI is adaptation of Bailey 2. So Bailey 3. So you need special training and equipment for that. So when we screen by DASI and we read red flags, we do the complete Bailey or DASI assessment. So it involves your motor, gross motor, fine motor, language, and social. All 4 components are assessed separately in this, and separate scoring is being given, percentile is given. So then you come to know in which particular heading or field this baby is lagging. So, and then the physiotherapist or occupational therapist who are there along with you, they concentrate on those particular section in which these babies are lagging.
True.
So this is how we do them. But for normal pediatrician and neonatologist, if you screen, this DASI screening or Trivandrum development screening also is very quick. And ML-Tenson, evaluation, neurological, basically the motor evaluation is something which is very useful.
Yeah, I think Dr. Mohit has rightly summarized that if you are a pediatrician or if you are a neonatologist, go with DASI screening or BSID screening, or the simpler tools like DDST, Denver Developmental Screening Tool, Trivandrum Developmental School. But if you are a child psychologist or if you are a developmental pediatrician, we would prefer either DASI, that is Developmental Assessment Scale for Indian Infants, or BSID 3 and now the BSID 4 also. These 2 scales have extensive things to be done. It takes more than an hour for doing these 2, and it should be done by trained people or certified people only. And however, the best is you will get to know the domain scoring, and if there is a discrepancy in the domain, you can pick up problems. Like if a language is defective, you can look at hearing. If motor is a problem, other things are doing well, then you know that nutrition is a problem, or a vitamin D deficiency could be a problem. So likewise, if you have particular things problematic in particular domain, you can make a diagnosis and organic cause can be found out. But there are some tools which are easy for the parents to do, and these are the ages and stages questionnaire, which can be easily be done by the mother or the father or the family, which they can score themselves and then come out with evaluation by themselves and see if they need to see a pediatrician or a developmental therapist. And the WHO milestone checklist is a useful checklist for most parents to have it. And it is important that your follow-up chart also has this checklist so that parents can identify at what time they can report to the follow-up clinic. So this is the common Trivandrum developmental scale. It just requires a pen and a torch and a keychain for doing this. Then all of you are familiar with the Denver Developmental Screening Test 2. I'm sure this has again 4 components: fine motor, gross motor, language, and personal social. All this together will help you to find out the number of delays and cautions, and based on that you can decide the way the baby can be labeled as normal or refer or needs more evaluation. So development is a very huge challenge, but screening development is what most of us will be doing. And the finer development, people like Mohit are trained and certified can do. But screening, all of us should be aware to how to do the screening development assessment. Now, apart from neuromotor and development comes the visual, because what we can do is preventive. And visual is one area where a lot of preventive aspects can be done. And for that, I'll request Jafar to tell us how do we do the visual assessment, when and how do we, what are the critical times at which we should be doing, and what is the critical times at which we should be evaluating for vision.
There are many problems.
Little louder, Jafar. Your voice is little low.
There are many problems which are related to vision and ocular, mainly in preterm baby who is having hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, jaundice, or baby who is hypoglycemia. The most common problem which you are dealing with the way which comes across the very preterm babies is retinopathy of prematurity. So all babies who born less than 32 weeks or below 2 kilograms, we should screen first at 21 days of life in NICU only. And then after first consultation by ophthalmologist, we should give the proper examination protocol given by that ophthalmologist based on the staging of the disease. If the baby is having some severe disease, they have to follow very closely, and sometimes they need to follow very alternate day, or and they have to give some therapy also. And after that, the baby once discharged or the baby is doing well, they need to follow even up to 6 months or more based on the full vascularization. So they need to follow the baby up to 6 months or full vascularization in cases of sometimes they very closely the baby will like therapy for ROP and even like injection. So there are other problems which are also associated with the premature babies. Apart from ROP, these are related to other conditions like refractive errors, amblyopia, strabismus, anisometropia. So when the baby comes for a repeat follow-up to ophthalmologist, they have to check for vision, screen, cataract, and some optic atrophy even before 1 year of age, or we can say that at 9 months of age, they need to screen for all other problems also. If the baby is having refractive errors, they may have myopia or they may have hypermyopia. Both these related to the prematurity. So sometimes these conditions need specs for correction of vision. If the baby who develop amblyopia in for premature babies or baby with hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, if we unable to pick amblyopia timely, it may lead to permanent loss of vision. So to prevent the vision, other condition like strabismus could be we have to detect early, and this may need treatment in case like eye patching, atropine drops, and some corrective lenses are also required for vision. In isometry, there are a problem which is two eyes have different number, and this should be treated timely accordingly to the condition.
Thank you, Jafar. And that means every preterm baby at 1 month is a compulsory thing for ROP. And for all other NICU graduates, we should have one examination after discharge. Definitely another examination at 9 months of age is a very, very important examination by the ophthalmologist, because myopias, hypermetropias, strabismus, these if corrected early, they can be managed very well. Cortical blindness, poor vision, or cerebral cortical poor vision can be improved if we start early intervention. So 8 months or to 9 months examination by ophthalmologist for all NICU graduates is very important. Although we know that ROP premature babies 1 month is important and then continue till vascularization, but for all other babies 8-9 months examination should be a must. One another examination we should be must is a preschool. Before starting school, all children should have one ophthalmological examination, because many problems can be addressed. Poor schooling, poor cognition may be most of the time related to the vision problem, and which may be missed unless you get a good opthal evaluation. So the another very important neurosensory problem is the hearing. And we know that we are going towards universal screening for hearing in some of the units, or in some states, universal screening is already accepted. But I think there is a role for universal screening for all the NICU graduates. And for this, I'll ask Naveen to help us. And how do we plan the hearing screening for NICU graduates?
Yeah, you are rightly pointing out that every baby, every newborn which is born, whether it is a normal or an NICU graduate, should undergo a screening because the incidence is very high and it is easily missed and can lead to later on cognitive as well as a language delay. But if we talk about NICU graduate, then all babies needs to be screened, as Mohit has already pointed out, with the rule of 136, that within 1 month at discharge or maximum within 1 month you should have a screening. And probably this screening for NICU graduate should be by automated BERA, automated auditory brainstem response, rather than having a OE, because in OE you can miss some of the abnormality which are related with the neuronal pathways. So it is the stress is to have a automated ABR for NICU graduates. And two-step assessment should be done. If the first test is failed, then the second needs to be done, and by 3 months, by all means, we should be able to diagnose the condition by a full-fledged conventional BERA, and by 6 months, we should be able to have a early intervention as far as a hearing aid is concerned or a cochlear implant, because the language development starts much earlier. In first 6 months, you will have some of the language development happening in a newborn. So this so there are all guidelines, European as well as American, even the NNF guidelines says to follow this rule of 136. And we need, and there is a recent study which tells us that the NICU graduate are 10 times at a higher risk than a normal babies for having a hearing abnormality. So incidence is something around 2 to 3% of NICU graduates where we are going to detect the hearing abnormalities. And some of the nearly a recent Singapore studies has stated that in fact the 25% of these babies have a normal pass test in the initial first 3 months of life, but when they did it at 6 months, nearly 20 to 25% of these babies have a abnormal hearing testing. So these needs to be followed up at least another test at 6 months. The recommendation is to follow up every 6 months till 3 years. But in a resource poor countries like us, at least another test at 6 months, and then later on you can follow up by a clinical evaluation. And if you have any suspicion in clinical evaluation, you must get a repeat test, because you may get a progressive or a delayed onset hearing abnormalities, especially in a NICU graduate babies.
Thank you, Naveen. And as he rightly pointed out, OAE for all the term babies who are not admitted to the NICU, ABR or AABR for babies who are admitted to the NICU. These are the tools, and we should do it. 136 was the rule, but now currently there is a change in guidelines. Instead of 136, now where they're saying 1, 2, 3. So you can see here that 3 has become 2 and 6 has become 3. So the rule is going to change, and this is a guideline from 2019, because now you can start hearing aids as early as 3 months. So you start early intervention, your outcomes are going to be better off. So OAE and ABR, I'm sure most of us know. We have been asked by the organizers to end by 6:15. So I will just want all the panelists just 1 or 2 words on the subsequent 2-3 things which we need to discuss. Mohit, how do we do the behavioral assessment? Any particular way and particular tool?
The behavior assessment, especially in NICU, we start from the preterm, like assessment of preterm behavior or neonatal behavior assessment scale. This is what from the NICU, because now early intervention and nesting, and like in our unit, not in India now, but in Canada and all, we used to do the neonatal behavior assessment scale. We need a trained person, OT, and then they have particular pictures, toys, which the baby likes, and they do early assessment by that. And then they early intervene. But after, like for corrected 3, 6, 9 months, other thing, so it is being a part of DASI or Bailey scale. Yeah, that is social part is the behavior.
So I think Brazelton behavioral assessment scale is a very useful tool for even for long-term prediction at discharge or in the preterm babies. Subsequently, yes, all the DASI, BSIDs can be used, But later on, after infancy, I think we have VSMS, that is Vinland Social Maturity Scale, can be used for a behavioral assessment scale. Language is again part of all the scales, but language is given some special importance because most of the current scales do not assess the language adequately. Naveen, can you tell us why we need to concentrate so much on language?
Yeah, quickly, I'll just point out that there are two things in language. One is the receptive and the second is expressive. See, it is not to be confused with the speech only. So language development starts much earlier, and the babies who are NSU graduate at a very high risk of having a atypical language development, which we may be able to detect grossly or the parents can notice later on. So language development starts much earlier in first 3 to 6 months of life, and there are some tools available. And for the language to develop, hearing is very important. So these tools are interconnected. You need to have a good hearing to have a good language development. There are one Indian tool which Dr. Nair has developed is a LEST, Language Evaluation Score Trivandrum. So that you can do in first 3 years of life, and it is a pretty simple tool rather than a complex tool. It is a pretty simple and can be easily done, and we should be doing it routinely in a NSU graduate follow-up.
So Jafar, one word on autism screening. Just one word. What is the tool and when do we start using it?
We can use MChat and MChat Revise tool. We can use MChat Revise tool is a questionnaire of 20 questions that is also available online. So the parents have to answer and then they can get the score. Maybe low risk, baby is having autism or not.
Yeah.
So that infant toddler this is another tool we can use it.
So we'll just speak about MChart R, which is a revised form, which can be used for. Hello.
Hello, 5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, we are closing anyway. So MChart R is a very useful tool,
Okay.
but it starts after 18 months. Before 18 months, I think we have other tools, which infant toddler checklist is one other tool which can be used at early age. So Jafar, can you tell us the early signs of this?
Yeah, there are very signs they can parents can become like avoiding of eye contact, having little interest in other children, limited display of language, and getting upset by minor changes. So parents can also notice the baby's such early sign, and they can notice, and they can we can screen the baby earlier.
Yeah, the earlier we diagnose autism, the better are the outcomes. Early intervention can help us in improving the outcomes of autism. So I think we have covered most of the topics of follow-up and development. We try to synthesize everything in this 45 to 50 minutes. And before I end, I just want to show you an online standardized module which is developed by Indian Neonatal Network, which is initially doing the networking for the NICU graduates. Now we have a follow-up tool. I'll just show you the heading so that people can have a look at what is being done in the follow-up and what all is included. Can you see this? Can you see this, Jafar? Can you see my this? Can you see my?
We can see the slide. We can
Just
see the
a minute,
slide.
yeah.
And आप शायद hyperlink है sir अगर तो if
yeah.
you go there
Now,
हाँ तो आप no हाँ yes sir now we can see.
Okay, so this is the NICU baby, and when I click on the follow-up, I come to another field. I search for the baby who is discharged. So then I look at this baby. Today I have a baby which I have done yesterday, baby of Vani. So I open up this list. Then it picks up the fields, the baby's problem is current age, chronological age, corrected age. Then the weight is entered, length and OFC. You can see the Z-scores of the baby. What you need to know is that Z-score less than 2 is important. That means the baby is failing to thrive. Nutrition on the breast feed, formula feeds, and the complementary feeds. Then we have the Hammersmith infant examination, which is done, which gives us the score in cranial nerves, posture, movement, tone, and it gives you a total score. Then if I click how it is being done, it's just clicking on the buttons here. You can see here, we click on the button, it gives you a score. So eye movements, visual response. So this is a pictorial way of doing the Hammersmith. So once I finish of doing it, it gives an automatic score, which gets filled up for the patient. So now the developmental assessment, again, you can see the development assessment being done here. We are doing the DDST2, gives you the gross motor, fine motor, language milestones for this baby, for this chronological age. Only those milestones are visible here. And the language assessment scale, that is the LEST scale is shown here at this age. What are the milestones of language required? Then the summary of language assessment comes here. Then is a vaccine scheduler. Then the hearing, vision, squint, the scoring of MCHART, and the scoring of the ages and stages questionnaire. This is, you can see on the top right corner here, send app link. When we click on the link, the patient gets a mobile app link and he can download the app and he can continue to look at the progress of his baby. And when you send the MCHART, the link goes to the patient and then patient fills the MCHART himself and the score comes back to the database. And when I go to the original screen on the follow-up, so when I look at the follow-up list, and if I look at a baby, and this baby now, this is Reshma Begum, requires 3 follow-ups, 6, 10, 12, 18 months. All are red bars, are red bubbles. So which tells me that I need to call up these patients. And if I look at the Bhavna twin one, the 12 months is green. So 12 months examination is done for this baby. And when I click on this 12, if it is not done for the red, if I click on this, the patient gets a mobile link for doing the ages and stages questionnaire. And once the patient finishes the ages and stages questionnaire, this will become the green bubble. So this is a very new tool which we are using for doing the development and to standardize development. And all the people who are part of the neonatal network have access to this. And that is how we need to have a standardized format for doing the development assessment. It should include the growth, nutrition, neuromotor, development, hearing, vision, behavior. All the components together forms a good neurodevelopmental assessment. And the whole purpose is to pick up early problems so that early interventions can be done. For every one of these components, there is early intervention available. And when we all do the early intervention fast and quick, we can avoid major morbidities. The current morbidities of severe asphyxia, ELBWs up to 25%. Problems can be dramatically decreased if we all work in cohesion with ourselves and also after 18 months with the developmental pediatricians. So with that, I will ask my panelists to say one last word and then we'll close it off. Mohit, because I don't see many questions here. So let's give one last statement and then we'll close it off. Mohit?
Yes, sir. So especially this is for pediatricians and neonatologists, busy OPD. Assessment, if you cannot do scoring, just do general assessment, screen. And for, sir, this basically for the behavior and autism, the thing which I've learned is if the baby is not crying coming to you, then do have a doubt for that. 2 red flags. And then refer. If you don't have time or you are not trained in that, then refer.
Yeah. Naveen?
The initial few weeks, we must have a strict follow-up for the weight gain at the head circumference. If the initial follow-up, 4 to 6 weeks follow-up doesn't show a good weight gain, it is a poor indicator that it will put a baby at risk of longer neurodevelopment disability, and brain will grow only if the other body, the physical growth is there. The head circumference is a very simple tool in a busy OPD. If it is growing well, probably you are better off. If it is not growing, then definitely this baby going to need a very detailed neurological evaluation.
Jafar?
Examination of operative angle is also very quick examination which we can do in NICU and also during follow-up. That will give the clear idea of the early prosthetic development. So we can refer to physiotherapy for.
Thank you. So I think our panelists have summarized most of the things which we wanted to learn from this symposium. And I thank DIAP, the Gujarat State Pediatric Academia, for conducting and then inviting us for doing this special program and follow-up of NICU graduates. I think you have been the leaders to ensure that follow-up comes as an important part of neonatology. Over to you, Anand.